you.
Have fun.
Good luck.
We're live on Facebook now. This meeting is now streaming live.
Amazing.
Good morning. Welcome. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
I am delighted to see so many of you tuning in this morning. The numbers are coming in both on Facebook Live and through our direct Zoom link. I want to welcome you on behalf of McGill University. My name is Carola Weil, Dean of Continuing Studies here at McGill University in Montreal, wonderful Quebec, Canada. And for those of you who are sweltering in other parts of the world, we wish we could send you some nice mild weather that we have here today, but we wish you great health and safety. In these unprecedented times of COVID-19, remote learning, remote work, we are searching for a new normal. Flexibility, adaptability, and rethinking how and why we do things is on everyone's mind. This is the core mission of the School of Continuing Studies at McGill University, also referred to as McGill SES. Please do take a moment in between sessions this week to explore what McGill SES can do for you. Not just today or this week, but 365 days, toute la longue vie. Now, more than ever, we have to tap into our inner powers. To help you do this week's Power Skills 2020, our 5-day virtual career conference, has been designed to inspire you, to educate you, to connect you with like-minded individuals. This week is a chance for you to brush up on some skills and rethink your life and work strategies for the new normal that is ahead for all of us. I want to thank you for joining us this week. We hope you will take full advantage of the opportunity to listen to the great speakers, educators, and industry experts who have graciously made themselves available to you. Let me share a few ground rules for this morning and all of our other sessions. Please keep your mics and videos off. They have been turned off already. If you have questions you would like to ask our keynote speaker, whom I'll introduce in a moment, please type them in the chat and Ryan will answer them directly with help from our team from McGill University. It now gives me great pleasure to welcome and introduce Mr. Ryan McCarty, an internationally renowned speaker and author of the groundbreaking book, Build a Culture of Good. He is also the co-founder of Culture of Good, Inc. Ryan McCarty's sense of humor and wit inspires audiences across the world. He has been advising organizations around the world on how to create an inspiring, meaningful, and engaging workplace. It is that kind of culture of good that drives businesses, inspires employees, customers, clients, and communities. And it connects everyone to a greater purpose that empowers you to do more. Ryan's work has been featured in Huffington Post Inc.com, People Magazine, Forbes, and many more places. We are so fortunate to have him with us today. I'm confident that you will be inspired by this session, and we hope that you will bring that inspiration back to your entire teams through your own personal leadership. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you Ryan McCarty. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone who's here. I can hear you clapping from everywhere that you are. Just kidding. We're here virtual with you. Thank you, Dean, for that introduction. So excited to be with everyone. I am in the States in Indianapolis, Indiana. And again, just feel so blessed to have the opportunity to be with every single one of you today and to bring this message of making the workplace and world better by bringing our soul to work every single day. So we're here in Indianapolis, Indiana. I've added this plant next to me. It's not a beautiful plant, so I'm not going to teach you interior decoration. We're going to go over culture and employee engagement, what the new employee engagement looks like, customer engagement, how to build your business with a sense of purpose and a sense of fulfillment and meaning. And this kind of message is so vital to who I am and what I'm about really early on in life, and beginning at the age of 6 and 7 years old, having gone through a major tragedy that really defined who I am to this day, led me to do the kind of work that I'm doing through what we call the culture of good, where companies build good cultures that impact their employees and their customers and their community, the world around them. So early on, as I stated, there was a major tragedy in my life that led me to this desire to do purposeful work. At the age of 6, my mother, having been diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic and depressed, and really that mental illness and that darkness in her life really began to take over when I was 6 years old. At the time, my father was a heroin addict. My mother was, again, dealing with all her mental illness. My father had come back from the Vietnam War and found himself in a veterans hospital where he met my mother, who was a nurse at the time before I came about. And so apparently when you introduce a drug addict and a nurse together, you get me. So here I am, and that's my story. That's the reality of how my life begins. They fell in love, and here I am. But again, at the age of 6, my mother tragically, over that course of the year, continued to get worse in terms of her mental illness. And when I was in school one day, I came home from school to find that my mother had died from suicide. And so at the age of 6, the world that was already fractured and broken to pieces, pretty much at that moment in my life, felt really tumultuous and tragic. And that became a defining moment for me, because from that moment forward, I remember from the age of 8 and 9 and 10 years old, really seeking to find answers about what life is really about. Why did I go through what I went through? What was the purpose of that? What's my purpose now? And how do I take my pain and really lean my life into the world and do good through that pain? And within the year of that tragic death of my mother, my father's life really took a 180 turn, and he was able to get off of drugs and alcohol and even some thoughts of mental, not thoughts, but having mental illness himself and the difficulty of what he was going through. And so I feel so fortunate today, because as he continued to heal and to get better, my life became better as well. He eventually began to work in local churches and ministries and impacting the communities where we were living and giving back to others who were addicted to drugs, or others who had broken families and broken marriages and kids who were hurting. And that really led me into doing the work that I did in the first 20 years of my professional career. And so I spent most of my professional career in the beginning in nonprofit work, charity work that was very fulfilling and meaning. And through doing that work, continued to see transformative moments in other people's lives, not just in mine. And I think that's the call that every single one of us have, regardless of what kind of business or industry we find ourselves in. It's how to have the soul of a nonprofit in a for-profit business, how to bring your soul to work every single day. And that's what I was doing for 20 years. I knew what my purpose was. I knew what it meant like to do a day's work and really feel a sense of meaning and a sense of fulfillment in that work. And so I continued to do the meaningful, fulfilling work in the nonprofit space until one day I was introduced into the corporate world. And within the corporate world, I immediately identified that there were those that were just coming to work for a paycheck. They were just going to work, but they really didn't feel this sense of meaning and this sense of fulfillment. And so I continued to pursue what I knew really well, and that was how to do work, but how to do it in a way that made a difference in the world and also gave me a sense of meaning and fulfillment. And that's really the work that I started embarking on. And that's the work that we started building in a company with over 3,000 employees in 43 states. This culture of good movement that gave people more than a paycheck. It gave customers more than a transaction. It was so connected into the purpose and the mission of the company that it felt as though it was a for-profit company, but it had that soul. It had the soul of a nonprofit. And so what I want to share today, and I'm going to share my screen here, so just give me a second. We're going virtual, but I'm going to share my screen. And what I want to share today is this idea of bringing your soul to work every single day. What does it mean to bring your soul to work every day and to drive extraordinary results in the workplace and the world? And I think that's so important when we think about what we do as business leaders, as staff, as those that work for companies that have a great sense of meaning and a great sense of purpose and mission. It's really, how does that purpose and that mission go from just being an initiative or a program to being embedded into the very culture and the DNA of who we are as business leaders, who we are in the world around us, and having that impact, impacting other families in our community that are families like mine was, impacting other children, other little 6-year-old Ryan McCartys in our neighborhoods. Where we do business, we do good. Where we do business, we make an impact. And we make an impact in the workplace, but we also make an impact in the world. And so as we look at this idea today, I want us to go through a few things that we're going to cover. Number one, we're going to talk about how to engage employees and how to be engaged as an employee and our customers in meaningful ways. And so wherever you are right now, we're learning power skills, right? And so on the count of 3, I want you to say power. And we're going to do this all together. Even though we may not be able to hear each other, we're going to say the word power all together, okay? We're going to talk about these 3 power moves that we're going to make today. So on the count of 3, let's say power. 1, 2, 3. Power! Now, I don't know if you said it or not. Some of you are at work. You have people around you. They're going to think you're weird. So you were like, power. I want you to say it out loud and make everybody think you might be a little bit crazy, all right? Let's do it again. 1, 2, 3. Power! All right, so these are power skills. These are power moves that we're gonna learn today. How to engage our employees and customers in meaningful ways. How to tie our purpose directly to our overall strategy within business. And then how to embed that purpose into a culture to make the workplace and world a better place. And so we're going to look at those 3 things today. In the course of, in doing so, I'm going to tell some stories about the work that we've done through Culture of Good that I think are going to really inspire you and give you an opportunity to see that this is possible. It's possible to become a profitable business, but have a great sense of purpose. It's what we do when we bring profitability and purpose together. It's what I call purposability. It's purposeful profit. It's profit that gives us an opportunity to do even greater good in the world. But it's very purposeful. It gives everyone that sense of meaning and that sense of fulfillment. So as my story progressed, my father, again, continued to pursue making the world a better place. And I just pressed right into that and followed his footsteps. Day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, having these opportunities to go into communities and have that kind of impact gave me that sense of meaning. But having stepped into the corporate world, I realized really early on that we needed to bring this type of understanding into the workplace. At the age of 19, I met this beautiful woman named Katara. And Katara had a daughter named Bria, and Katara and I fell in love, and we had this wonderful moment where we had a daughter as well. And so I was able to adopt her daughter, And then we had our daughter together. And so we have two daughters, Bree and Brent. I want to show you their picture before I go any further, because this is, I know some of you, probably 95% of you think I stole this off of Instagram, but I didn't. They're really this beautiful on the outside and the inside. And so what you're looking at on the left, that's Katara, that's my wife. In the middle is Brenna, and on the right there is Bria. And it was in the moment where I met Katara and we started this family, where that sense of purpose and that sense of belonging, something that I was really longing for in this world, that I feel a little bit as though I had lost that when I lost my mom. I started to gain that back having my own family. And then having pressed into the work that we were doing collectively together. So my wife and my two girls, we raised them in this culture of giving back and doing good. We would set up tarps on a Saturday, bring some ice pops into some neighborhoods, work with the kids, talk to the parents. We had mentorship programs going on and tutoring with children after school, and that continued to expand. We did work globally in Zambia, Africa, where we're so fortunate to be able to work with an organization and build a school for 500 children that are still going to school to this day. Just beautiful, significant, meaningful work. And our girls, because they grew up in that culture, really embraced what we were doing as a family, and to this day continue to press forward. All three, my wife and my two girls, all three are certified life coaches, and I'm a mess, okay? And so they always have someone to work on. They are always counseling me, giving me therapy and life coaching. And so I'm just this constant work in progress for them. But they pursued doing meaningful work because Katara and I, as their parents, really embodied what it meant to live a fulfilling life, a meaningful life. And I think that matters to what we're talking about today, because if you're in leadership, as a parent is, the people that work for you and work with you will embrace what you first embody. If you don't embody fulfilling work and meaningful work and purposeful work, then your employees and your customers won't embrace that because it won't be part of your culture. I like to say it this way. Leaders, if you're going to lead your culture, you got to live your culture. You got to live it. As a matter of fact, I really believe that if you want to define what your culture is as a company, just look to its leadership, because leaders lead the culture by living the culture. As we embody this culture of good and doing good for our employees and customers in the world, our employees and our customers will embrace it. They'll embrace it when we embody it. And so when we think about this idea of the work that we do, what we're doing is looking for this sense of calling, the sense of purpose. When I say calling, I mean this compelling internal movement within us, within our soul, that draws us to do something. We see a need and therefore we want to meet it. We find our calling when our greatest passion collides with our greatest contribution to make the world better. I would say the workplace and the world better. When our greatest passion and our greatest contribution collide. So it's not just about coming to work with our soul and with our passion and wanting to do good work. It's actually contributing toward the betterment of the workplace and the world. It's in the execution, it's in the doing, it's not just in the believing. Because if I were to sit down with you, I know we're virtual right now, but if I were to sit down with you at a table and we were to talk, obviously practicing social distancing, but if we were to sit down and we were to talk and I were to ask you, what are you passionate about? What do you care most about? Every single one of you might say something different, because what I like to say is we're all a little passionately odd, all right? So if you're sitting near someone, I want you to look over at them and just tell them, you're a little odd, all right? So my helper's here with me, one of my teammates, Sharon's right behind the camera, so I'm just gonna tell her right now, You're just a little bit odd. Tell me.
You are definitely a little bit odd.
She said, I'm definitely a little bit odd, which means I'm a whole lot of odd, right? But we're odd that way. We all have within us something that compels us, what I would like to call our calling in life, compels us to do something about the needs in the world, about what we see, the tragedies that others are going through, similar to mine, the things that transpire in our lives that have a profound impact, not just on us, but on others. When you look out into the world, what moves you to do something? What moves you to do, not just what moves you to feel pity or what moves you to feel sad, what moves you to do something? What do you see in the world that you say, you know what? I can do something about that and I feel moved to do it. That's your calling. But you find that when your passion, what you're moved to do, and your contribution collide, where's that collision take place? What happens in our lives when that collision can take place through and in our work? Imagine going to work every single day and what you do, knowing that what you do is connected to a greater why that gives you that sense of calling. Imagine waking up on a Monday morning knowing you're not just going to have to go to work and get a bunch of tasks done, but as you're doing that work, that you're actually impacting the world in a profound way. How much more fulfilling is that going to be when we do that as it's tied into our day-to-day activities? And that's what we're going to learn as a power move today. This is a power skill that we're learning, is how to take purpose and passion and a sense of calling and embed it right into the culture and the DNA of what we do every single day in the workplace, in the world. So when I was doing the nonprofit work, what you'll realize within the nonprofit space is that nonprofits originate with a great sense of purpose and a great mission, and they work to become profitable over time. And they could always use more volunteers and more money, right? More finances. And that's the nonprofit space that I spent over 20 years in. And having stepped into the for-profit space, the nonprofit space obviously could use more time and volunteers and more money. But when we step into the for-profit space, we see similar scenarios, but quite opposite, because the for-profit space originates to make profit and to become more missional over time. And so where nonprofits start missional and become profitable, for-profits start profitable and eventually start asking the question, what's our mission? What's our purpose? Because for-profits could always use more purpose tied to their overall strategy. And that's the reality that I found myself when I stepped into the for-profit world, into the world of profit. I said, man, if we could inject this with purpose, if we could inject for-profit business with a sense of meaning and fulfillment, we could actually start a movement across the world of businesses that identify needs in their community, identify needs in their workplace, and they work really hard to ensure that they're not just in business to become profitable, but they're in business to become purposeful. So we all know the first rule of business is what? To stay in business. Because if you don't stay in business, there are no other rules. But the second part of that first rule is not just to stay in business, but to know why you're in business in the first place. This work continued to grow and develop over time. And this is what I want to share with you, is how to take very purposeful work and how to embed it into the culture of what you do every single day as a business. And so I want us to look at this idea of purposeful work through the lens of one of the latest studies around how employees know the purpose of the company that they work for. And it's very much parallels engagement within the workplace as well, because according to the latest stats from Harris Poll, and this was just last year, only 37% of employees clearly know their company's purpose. Only 37% are just at the same percentage of employees that state they're engaged at work. Only 20% are enthusiastic about the purpose. So even those that know the purpose aren't very enthusiastic about it. Only 20% see how they can support that purpose. Only 15% of employees see how they or feel how they can clearly been enabled to work toward the purpose, only 15%. And only 20% of employees fully trust the company that they work for, only 20%. And so what we see is this tie between purpose and trust. And let me say this, if you don't have a culture of trust, you'll never have a culture of purpose, which means you'll never have a culture of good. A culture of good is a culture that's good for employees, it's good for customers, and it's good for the community. But as we're building this, we have to understand that the reality that we're facing is that the majority of our employees don't even know what our purpose is. So it's so important as business leaders to not just embody that purpose, but to talk about it, to make sure it's embedded in everything that we do and everything that we say authentically, genuinely what we're about and who we are. So I know some of you are looking at these statistics and you say, well, you know how statistics are. 60% of the time it's right all the time, right? So we know that. But when you look at these statistics, if we were to take these statistics and we were to convert these into numbers based on you being a coach of a soccer team or a football team of 11 players on your team, you have 11 players on that team. And based on these statistics, this is what that would mean regarding your employees. The 37% that are not clearly knowing the company's purpose, this is what that means. It means that only 4 of your 11 players know which goal they're going toward. Only 4 of your 11 players. Remember, only 20% are enthusiastic. Only 2 of your 11 players on your team actually care. Think about that for a moment. If you had 11 players on your team, based on those statistics, only 2 know which position they're supposed to be playing. Only 2 players believe that their efforts on the field are making a difference. And based on those statistics, 8 of your players, 8 of your 11 players would just as likely to be rooting for the other team. 8 of your 11 players, could you imagine trying to win a match? If 8 of your 11 players are rooting for the other team, this is crazy, I know, but this is how important it is that purpose is tied in to everything that we're doing. Everything from how we're recruiting new employees, how we're hiring, onboarding, how we're doing our learning and development, how we're learning ourselves and developing ourselves and our skill set. One of the greatest power skills that you're going to learn over this time together is the power skill of embedding purpose into your everyday activities. That every single day, your work, what you're putting effort into, gives you a sense of fulfillment beyond a paycheck. It gives you a sense of purpose. It gives you that sense of meaning. But here's where we have a gap. And here's where I want to focus over the next few minutes. The gap is where we find that there are companies that have leaders that really care deeply. And I meet some of you all the time as I'm traveling. And as I'm going around the world, I meet leaders that say, Ryan, I have so much passion in life. I feel such a sense of purpose of what I'm doing. How do I bring this into my company? And inevitably, when we start talking about business, when we talk about what we do every single day, there's a gap when we don't fully know what the purpose of our business is. Remember the second part of that first rule of business. Not only to stay in business, but to know why you're in business in the first place. How do we find that why? Not just for ourselves. Now you're all passionately odd, okay? That's gonna be the word, right? You're going to forget everything that I've said. And you're going to say, you're going to tell your friends or family, I went to this session and I don't remember anything Ryan McCarty said, but I remember he said I was passionately on. And I believe that because if I were to sit down with you, as I stated earlier, we would all have a different sense of what really compels us to do something meaningful. For me, my passion comes out of my pain. I know why I'm passionate about kids that are underserved. I know why I'm so passionate about that, because I was one of those kids. See, here's what I believe. I believe that our passion comes from our compassion. And our compassion comes from what we've come past ourselves. Let me say that again, because you might have missed it. Our passion in life comes from our compassion. Where do you feel compassion for others? Because that compassion is really authentic and genuine when we've come past that ourselves. That's truly one of the ways that we can find passion in our own personal lives. It's to look back over our past and say, what have I been through? What brokenness have I experienced? What tragedy has been a defining moment in my life, in the same way that Ryan was defined by what he went through with his mother dying from suicide and a father who was on drugs? What's that defining moment for you? When you consider the scope of your life and the sum of what you're doing, how closely is that tied into what you're compassionate for? Because if you're compassionate for what you're doing and for those that you're serving, because really ultimately what we're talking about is using what we do every day to serve in the workplace in the world, to become a servant of others. The reason that we're compelled to do that and feel called to do that is because our compassion is tied directly to what we've come past ourselves. What have you come past? Because your passion is so closely tied in to what breaks your heart, what moves you to help others, what compels you to serve in this world. And that's where we find our purposeful work as individuals. How do we find this as a company? I mean, think about it for a moment. It's difficult enough for some of us to answer what's our purpose in life. Imagine for an entire enterprise of people. It could be 12, 25, 2,500, 25,000 people working. We work with companies that are startups with just 30 people, and we work with companies that have 30,000 employees. Massive enterprises that are searching, desiring, wanting to know what is the purpose of our business. Remember what I said earlier, that for-profit companies, they start to become solvent and profitable as soon as possible. And then over time, there's that sense of wanting to become missional and very purposeful. But that's not something that you just stumble into. As it's defined in our personal lives by what we're compassionate about. We have to dig into the very soul of the business. In order for us to bring our soul to work every day, in order for our employees to bring our soul to work every day, we as business leaders have to define what is the soul of our business. What defines us? What are we compassionate for, or who are we compassionate for in the world? And then how do we tie that into our strategy? It seems like this would be a really difficult task, and certainly this takes time. But over the next few minutes, I'm going to give you 3 questions that you can ask as a business leader, just 3, that you can ask that will start to pinpoint that very sense of mission, that very sense of purpose, where you look at your business and maybe your company, within your company or your business, or one of the businesses that you're going to lead into the future, or what you do every single day. Maybe there's that missing element of purpose that you're really longing for. because I believe all of us are longing for that. But within the business, how do we find that? 3 questions that I'm going to ask you to ask yourself, and I love this first question. This first question, after we read this, that employee fulfillment is a new employee engagement. So before we get into the first question, I want you to see this. Employee fulfillment is a new employee engagement. When we talk about engagement, when we talk about all the programs and platforms and everything that we can inject into our business, I have never found anything in all the work that I've done in over 28 years of nonprofit and for-profit leadership. I have not found one thing or one power move that has been greater than creating an environment where people were connecting and identifying what fulfilled them in their work, what fulfilled them in their life. When we're talking about engagement, there is nothing like engaging the souls of your employees. These are the type of companies that employees want to work for and want to work with. These are the type of companies that offer that sense of more than a paycheck, that give us a sense of purpose, that give us a sense of meaning and a sense of fulfillment. So I would ask you today, how fulfilled do you feel in your work? And if you don't feel fulfilled, what do you need to change? Are you crafting your passion into your everyday work? Are you finding ways that your work ties in to bettering the workplace and bettering the world? Employee fulfillment is a new employee engagement. If we want our people to be engaged, we've got to give them a sense of fulfillment, that after they're done with their work, they know that what they accomplished and what they contributed made the workplace and world a better place. Now, this next slide is really going to blow your mind because I'm going to take it from just employee fulfillment. Watch this. Customer fulfillment is the new customer engagement. How are we engaging our customers and our clients and potential customers with a sense of fulfillment? How disruptive and transformative would it be in the world if when you did business with a company as a customer, just imagine this for a moment. If you were a customer of a particular business in your local neighborhood, and that business afforded you the opportunity to join with them in doing good in the local community. Not just saying, come do business with us because we care about the world and we make a difference in the world, but come join us. We invite you to come do good with us. Because if we're going to engage customers, it's in our employees, it's going to require us as leaders to bring that sense of fulfillment by inspiring them to do good with us, going into our local communities and giving back, caring about those families, much like mine and many of your stories as well. Not only would I ask you, if we were to sit down at a table, what you're passionate about, but I would also ask you to tell me your story. Because I can guarantee you that your story is directly tied into why you're passionate. And because of that, we have to look into our business and our companies as well and start to ask that question. How is our purpose as a company tied into the soul of who we are, the DNA, the culture of who we are every single day? When I stepped into the corporate world, into for-profit business, I had seen this opportunity as a way to be able to grow this possibility of doing good in the world for 10 years prior to that first day when I stepped into the business world. I had been doing a backpack giveaway for 10 years, giving to kids school supplies in my local neighborhood where I grew up, in the same community where I lost my mom to suicide. in the same community where my father was strung out on drugs, in the same community where my family fell apart and I experienced all that brokenness. I went back to that same community and started giving back to kids that were just like me. And that backpack giveaway grew and grew until the first day I stepped into the corporate world. And we were looking for an opportunity to have this moment of doing good in the world as a business. And immediately I knew that here was an opportunity to take the work that I had been doing, this small work of 25 backpacks the first year and 100 backpacks the next year. And I gave and gave and gave with a group of others in our local community that were giving back and sacrificing and serving our community and serving our children and those that were going to school with these school supplies and backpacks. I instantly knew, let's grow this backpack giveaway. Let's give backpacks across the country. And so the first year that we started this backpack giveaway through business, we were able to give away 60,000 backpacks with school supplies. 60,000 backpacks with school supplies. I'm going to jump forward because 7 years later, just a few weeks ago, actually, I think it was like last Sunday, we gave away our 1 millionth backpack with school supplies to local school children in neighborhoods and communities across the states. 1 million backpacks. I could have never imagined that we started with 25 and we were able to give away 1 million. And that's how purpose starts. It starts by us seeing a need and going into our community, going into our world, seeing a need in the workplace and asking, how can I do something about this? How can I serve? How can I serve? How can I do something? But as a business, where do we start? Because where I find the most difficulty and the greatest obstacles to building a culture of good that's good for employees and customers and community has everything to do with, number one, leadership. Because leaders, we have to embody this culture or our people won't embrace it. We have to live it or we're not able to lead it. So that's number one. The second is all about execution. Now, I want to inspire you to do good work and to reach out to kids like me when I was 6 years old and to families that are broken. But beyond just inspiration, I want to give you the information to execute on finding the purpose of your business, working with your leadership team, or maybe those that are above you in leadership, and working collectively together to identify purpose. So let's look at the 3 questions that we're going to ask today. Let's go ahead and skip that. So the first question that we want to ask today is, what does your company do? It's really simple. What does your company do? And how would you describe it to an 8-year-old? How would you describe what you do to an 8-year-old? Now, this is where we don't want to sound way too smart. No business jargon. I don't want you to explain all the purpose of your products and your services. We're looking to just what you do every single day. How would you describe it to an 8-year-old? So if you went into class at school, you were to stand up in front of a bunch of 8-year-olds. I don't know if all of you have had children before, but all of us have been children. So we know how 8-year-olds think, all right? And as an 8-year-old, how would you describe what you do? So some of the answer that I've gotten back, and I want to give you time right now to kind of think through this. And as I'm sharing a couple ideas with you on how to describe what you do to an 8-year-old, just think through this question. These are questions that I ask companies that, again, are startups and companies that are 3 billion plus a year companies, very successful, profitable businesses. I remember one company, when I asked them, describe what you do to an 8-year-old, I got back like 3 paragraphs of terms that I couldn't even understand myself. And I just turned 44 years old. And I'm like, if I don't understand, I know there's a lot of smart 8-year-olds that are way smarter than me. But if I don't understand, they won't either. And so I press them even further. And I've gotten some really good responses. I remember a leader in an owner that owned hotel chains, and they simply said, we provide a home away from home. And I said, perfect. That's what I'm talking about. This is the first question that we want to answer when identifying the purpose of our business. We can't embed purpose into our business if we don't know what that purpose is. So let's start with what we do. What do you do every day? And in a moment, we're going to move to why do we do it, but how do we describe that to an 8-year-old? And so another business leader said, we ship stuff to people. We ship stuff to people. That's what we do. And they're a fulfillment center, right? They have a distribution center and all of that, but they ship stuff to people, right? They provide stuff to people, right? And so these really simple answers, we want to get to that simple answer. And if you need help doing this, certainly reach out to me, because I'd love to have that conversation. But really, it just comes down to what do we do every single day and how we describe that to an 8-year-old. The second question that we ask, if we're going to find the purpose of our business and the purpose of our work, for those of you that don't run a large company or a small company, you're working on your own, you're working independently, you still ask yourself these questions. Please, this is such a profound way of getting to know the purpose of our business. The second is, with unlimited resource, what nonprofit would you start that would serve what you do? So the answer to your first question in the world, what do you do in the world? And what nonprofit would you start? So say for a moment that you and I met on the street and I was as wealthy as Bill Gates, right? And we had an opportunity to sit down at that table that I've been talking about through our time together. And we sat down and you told me about your passion. You told me about your story and why you're passionate about what you do every day. And then you shared with me the answer to that first question. What do you do in the world? And why do you do it? And when you gave me that answer from across the table, just imagine, this is a hypothetical, obviously. But I looked at you and I said, you know what? That moves me so much. You inspire me so much. I'm going to open up my bank account to you. And I want you to start thinking huge, across the world, global impact. If you had unlimited resource, say you had $10 billion, $100 billion, what nonprofit would you start with unlimited resource? Unlimited resource. But, catch this, it has to serve the answer to the first question, what you do. The gap is all about alignment. It's not just about doing good in the workplace in the world. It's not just about saying, you know what, here's what we do. And by the way, we do this good over here on the side and we post on social media and we have it on our website. And I like to say there's nothing bad about doing good. But when you align that good and that purpose with your business and what you do and your core competency in the strategic intent of your business, the overall strategy of what you do every day, then there's no longer a gap. It starts to make sense. But again, we're starting with unlimited resource. Sometimes it's hard for us to use our imagination in this way. It's difficult for us to think big, but I want you to do that for a moment. I want you to think really big. I want you to imagine if your passion was kids, school children, because maybe your story aligns with mine, and I was one of those kids that didn't have the resource to have a new backpack walking into school. I didn't have the resources to have school supplies like some of the other children. I remember what it's like having to sleep in the kitchen with my family and put a blanket up in the hallway and turn on the oven so we would stay warm in the winter because we didn't have heat. So I get that. And if we were to sit down and you were to share your passion with me, I understand it. I know what it feels like to lose the most important person in my life at 6 years old. I get that. I understand that. I'm passionate about it. And so for me, if I had 10 billion, if I had $1 billion, 10 billion, whatever, however much money it was, and I had the opportunity to start a nonprofit, I would expand all the work that I've done throughout my life for children and school children all across the world. I would make sure that every child had everything that they need to succeed in school. I would find those areas in the world where kids didn't have access to education. And I would ensure that we would provide that so that every young boy and every young girl would be able to wake up in the morning and know that they had a shot at making it and doing something with their life because someone cared enough to provide them an education. That's what I would do. But as a business, what would you do through your work? These are questions that we should sit down with our executive teams, with our leadership teams, with others that we work with and those that we work for. And we ask these questions to identify what it is that we would do as a nonprofit with unlimited funds. Now, I hate to disappoint you, but I'm not Bill Gates and I don't have $100 billion. I might be able to loan you 100, but I need it back in 2 days. So we're dealing with the reality here because right now we're dreaming really big, right? And I want you to do that. I want you to think about the Bill Gates Foundation and eradicating malaria, providing opportunities and solution for clean water across the world and other aspects of work that they're doing and continue to do. But here we are with limited resource. We may not be able to do a global scale nonprofit. We don't have the time to do that. We're running a for-profit company. We have a business. And so the third question I want us to ask is this. With limited resource, the current resources that we have, what good can we commit to start doing right now with the resources, current resources that we have that will serve what we do in the world? It's going to make the world a better place. We don't have the $100 billion, but what resources do we have? You may be in a scenario where you're running a company. You say, well, we have marketing dollars and we can shift some of that and we can identify what we can do. But I want it to tie closely into what we would have started as a nonprofit. See, we may not be able to build schools across the whole world and provide education for every young boy and every young girl. But we may be able to get 25 backpacks together with school supplies in our local community. We may be able to start there. We may be able to find that need. See, this is what we're doing. We're scaling back what we would have done, believing that as we start to lean our business and lean our work into the workplace and into the world, that as we start to make that difference will continue to grow. That's what business is all about, isn't it? It's not just about growing our profitability, it's about growing our purpose. Remember that term, purposability. It's starting our business knowing that we have to be profitable, but we're finding that sense of purpose and embedding it into what we do every single day. So how do we embed it? I'm going to give you 3-tiered approach to embedding purpose into your business. Now I'm going to leave some time for some questions here. The way that we do this is what we call big good, my good, big good, our good, my good. Big good is good that is very foundational to our business. Big good are events that are larger, and they're company-wide events. They're tied into that answer to that third question, what good can we do? Because remember, it's about contribution. It's not just about saying we're passionate as a business, but it's about what are we doing with that passion. The big good collectively takes our whole team as a business together, an enterprise, the entire business. And we work collectively together with employees and customers. Remember, that fulfillment that we want our employees and customers to feel. And we commit to doing big good on a quarterly basis. Some company-wide event that we can commit to with the time resource that we have, with the financial resource that we have, with the people resource that we have. We identify a big good that we do quarterly. It's predictable. There's a cadence of it every single quarter, so it's not random. It starts to get embedded into the day-to-day activities. The second level is the hour good. The hour good is an activity that can be led and ran by a team. It's taken on by a team. It's a leadership team. It's a store. It's a department within your company. The hour good could be you and a few other employees that are really passionate about something really specific. It's not as defined as the big good by the company itself. The big good is really more prescriptive in terms of what we're going to do as a business in the world on a quarterly basis. But as a company, we want to encourage our teams to go out and do our good as well. What's the contribution of the teams within your business, the team that you work for and work with toward that big good? That's what we call the our good. The impact's going to be proportionate to the size of the group. And so one of the ideas that one of the teams of our company that came up with in a small little town raised money for breast cancer awareness in the local hospital, in their local community. And the reason that they did that is one of the employees' moms had breast cancer. She's a survivor. And because of that, because that employee had been through that with her, what he had come past turned into his passion, because he was compassionate about his mom. And the whole team raised money by going to a local bowling alley and selling lanes. And in just one night of bowling, they raised over $3,500 for that local hospital. In one night, they tied their passion to their work because their entire team at work went out and did this good. Now, if you're on HR, you're going to hate the name of the event that they did. They called it Bowling for Boobies. Okay, I thought that was just such a hilarious name, but it was so good. I was like, how creative is that? They must have been more into marketing than they were HR. But before HR could find out about it, they did the Bowling for Boobies and they raised over $3,500. That's an Our Good event. And you can encourage your employees to do Our Good events every single quarter for that. The last level and the really important one is the My Good. My Good is where an individual act. What are you uniquely, or what we would say passionately odd? What are you passionate about as an individual employee? How are you not just joining in with the big good, which is the collective company-wide events, but the Our Good, which is the team, and then you as a person? Remember, you're passionately odd. It's important for you to know that you can bring your soul to work every day. So companies, we encourage companies to not only do company-wide events in the big good, not only give their teams the autonomy to choose some of that good themselves in doing Our Good, but then giving full autonomy to individual employees that go into their local neighborhoods and reach out to what they're passionate about, giving them paid time off, volunteer hours to do so. And that's what we call the big good, the Our Good, and the My Good. I'm about to break for questions here because some of you I know might have some questions on how to do all of this, and we've gone through some of that how. But you heard my story and how my journey of seeking after doing purposeful work came about, and how I came into the corporate world and learned what it meant to do nonprofit work and now for-profit work. And over the course of 30 years after losing my mom to suicide, I could have looked back on that defining moment and realized there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity for me to experience those that were there for me. As a child, I don't remember a whole lot of my childhood. So it was a surprise to me 30 years after I lost my mom to suicide that this little old lady about this tall walked up to me. And she looked at me and she said, "Ryan, are you Ryan McCarty?" I said, "Yeah," and tears just started streaming down her face. And she said, "You don't remember who I am, but I was your teacher. I was your teacher when you were in school that day, when you lost your mom." She said, "When it came to your mom's funeral, you didn't have anybody. So they called me, your teacher." And she said, "I just want you to know I showed up that day to your mom's funeral. And I was the one that took care of you." She said 3 words to me. She said, "I was there." She said, in class, when you would start crying, she said, I would put a towel on my shoulder and I'd pick you up and I'd hold you and teach the rest of the class after you lost your mom. She said those 3 words again. She said, "Ryan, I just want you to know, 30 years ago, I was there. I was there." I want you to see a picture of my teacher. This is Mrs. Parks. The life we live is the legacy we leave. Mrs. Parks was my teacher. Mrs. Parks was the one person that was there for me when my whole life fell apart. She became more than a teacher. My challenge for you, and regardless of whatever work you're doing, whatever business you're leading, become more than your position. Become more than your title, because you never know. There could be another 6-year-old little Ryan in your neighborhood, in your community, that simply needs you just to step out of what you do every day and connect it to why you do it. Imagine what the world can be like and the workplace can be like if we all embark on this work of making the workplace and world better by bringing our soul to work every single day. Thank you so much for this time that you've allowed me to be with you. I'm going to hand it off to our moderators and see if there's any questions that any of you have placed in, but I want to encourage you before we do the kind of work that 10, 20, 30 years from now, you can look back and say with your life and your work, those same 3 words that Mrs. Park said to me, I was there. Thank you. All right.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Wow, that was powerful.
Thank you.
That was absolutely amazing. I hope that you're all inspired today. Does anyone have questions for Ryan that you'd like to ask? You have the choice to either type it in the chat, or if you'd like to speak directly, we can unmute you to do that. We have fantastic comments in the chat. People are furiously saying thank you.
It's a little weird because you're in this space and you're like, I have no idea what's going on the other side of this. So
that is so true. Any questions? Oh, we have distance clapping. This is perfect.
Oh, distance clapping. That's awesome.
Yeah, Rosalie has a question.
Wonderful.
Yes, hi, Ryan. Thank you very much. I was wondering how you made the decision, or what made you make the decision. Oftentimes when people have troubling childhoods, they kind of repeat, so if you had a drug addict as a parent, they kind of repeat those things. So how did you make that decision that you were going to be the complete opposite of that and lead a completely different life?
Yeah, I was really fortunate because, like I stated, within the year of all of that happening, I'm going to be as real and vulnerable as I can with this answer. within the year of losing my mom, my dad remarried and was able to get off drugs. And so as a little kid, that's where I found the most stability was following after him, in spite of having really seeing him as very unstable. He was the only stability I had afterwards. And so I really followed in his footsteps. And because he got off drugs and I saw his life transformed, you know, for him, it was through church and ministry, and it was very transformative. And so being able to watch him, and quite honestly, I've begun unpacking that a little more, because I feel like early on, I suppressed a lot of my feelings and emotions and what I was going through. And I just kind of leaned my life into the good feeling of impacting others and making an impact on other kids. Even when I was a young person, 11, 12 years old, I was reaching out to children at that point and making an impact in their lives. And so it's really all I knew. I've just recently, probably sadly in the last few years, started doing therapy around that. And fortunately, because my father became addicted to this other kind of life, I followed that addiction rather than the drugs. And it was good, but then I had to unpack why I wanted to do good in the world. And I realized that sometimes we do good out of selfish reasons, right? And because it gives us a feeling or a sense of doing something. And so I always, even at the age of 8, 9 years old, like I stated, I've always had this sense that there's more to life than just what we see and sense around us. And that gave me a sense of purpose and wanting to see that same transformation I saw in my dad and in my life, in my family, happen for others. And I just kind of went that route. I never went, I know, and I welcome everyone from McGill University. I never went to college. I just really, even as a teenager, just pressed into this and never looked back. And so it's really all I've known.
Amazing. And thank you for your openness. I speak on behalf. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
I'm a mess. I'm not only passionately odd, I'm just odd. So
thank you so much.
So you know, but I think it's that brokenness and the mess that becomes the message. It's the difficulty that we've been through, the tragedies that become the defining moments. They don't necessarily define who we are, but I think they can define why we do what we do. And I think that's powerful to think about. And so I just encourage people to look back and not avoid facing their own truth and the pain, because there's just so much purpose that comes out of that. That's really where purpose is cultivated.
So much, Ryan. That was wow. Thank you. Mercedes de la Croix would like to know, she's asking, can you share how you got started? For example, where did you get the funding for the backpacks?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So the 25 backpacks, this was during a time where we were a young family, 2 kids. I had a mattress on the floor and no real bed. And we had a little rental house we were paying $385 a month for. And I was listening on the radio and I heard of outreach. This was before backpacks were kind of the thing to do. And I heard about an outreach that gave away backpacks, and I thought, you know, we were in a very depressed community where we were living, and I thought this is a tangible way of doing some good and saying we care. And so we started with the 25 backpacks. We just asked friends, and we said, hey, can each person sponsor a backpack? And that continued to grow year over year, and to when we started in the business world, where we came up with the funding on that. We took 2 to 3 months of marketing budget and didn't spend any of that on marketing, and we bought backpacks with school supplies. And I worked with a fulfillment center where I'm able to get backpacks with school supplies at just under $8 a piece. That's shipped out to locations with shipping, backpack, school supplies, and they're not junk. They're not the little string, crappy backpacks that you see that can't hold 2 books. These are really good backpacks. And so just worked really hard in finding how to source it. And then we just took 3 months of marketing budget. And then year over year, how we got to grow is we started working with vendors. And so companies like Samsung, because they were a major vendor for us, started donating significant amounts of money toward that good and not asking for any marketing or credit for doing so. And so they were so inspired to do good that vendors started giving back, and local community members and customers started giving. And so it's completely funded by customers and vendors and by the profits of the company today. But the first time it was just a shift from marketing. The whole marketing budget went into buying backpacks. And a second to that is when you do it that way, if you do have marketing funds available, there's nothing, we're not doing this work for marketing, but I like to say we should never do good to be seen, but we should always be seen doing good. And when we do good, that's the right kind of marketing. That's the kind of marketing that lets the world know we actually do care for authentic reasons. It's not for PR, it's not for marketing, but because we have a soul. And so the first year it started by just shifting 2 to 3 months of marketing to buy the backpacks.
That's
Thank
fantastic.
you for that question.
Yeah, that was a great question. It actually your answer leads to the next question from Lynn Slawaska. Forgive me if I didn't pronounce that correctly. Do businesses have any choice but to adopt a purpose-driven approach to thrive in a global economy?
I think that question was asked knowing what the answer is. Okay, so I'm going to answer it this way. Why would we ever want to not tie in purpose and be purpose-driven? Here's what I believe, and I like the idea of rehumanizing work. I like the idea of, if we're going to make the workplace and world better, we really have to first remember what makes us human. Because business is made up of humans. I would say it this way: business is a human endeavor. And so each one of us wake up consciously or subconsciously wanting a sense of meaning, wanting to know that our contribution in this world matters, that there's purpose. And so when we tie that into what we do as a business, the success of the global economy, really in the ability to be successful as a company. Again, I tie it right back to purposability. As you tie purpose into everything that you do, by the very nature of that, it grows your profitability. And by growing profitability, it affords us the opportunity to do even more good in the world. So one of the promises that organizations should make to their employees is that as we care about the world and as we give you permission to go and care, as that grows our business and the profitability of our company, and we've seen that within our company, we've seen 84% of employees stated that because of the culture of good, that led to new customer acquisition in their local communities. We didn't embark on doing it for that reason, but that's what happened. And so year over year, we've been able to give more and give back more because of that profitability. From backpacks, it went to teacher kits the second quarter. The third quarter, it went to nursing homes. The fourth quarter was veterans. And year over year, we've kept a couple of those as staple givebacks. But to answer the question, there's really no way in my mind to be successful in business other than by doing purpose, because I tend to define success differently than a lot of people. If we define sex, well, there you go. That's the virtual world there. Maybe cut that part out. If we define success as the impact that we can have on the world that gives us a sense of fulfillment, then I think we're onto something really powerful. And that's a power skill that's really necessary in today's global market, and I know moving forward. Also, with so many people working virtually, what is it that ties us all together? Is it Zoom? Because after this Zoom goes off, say everybody that was here, all of us collectively together, we all knew what our mission was. We knew what our purpose was and what we're passionate about. And when the Zoom call ends and this presentation ends, we turn it off. This isn't the only connection we have. I walk out of this room still connected with you because we have the same mission and the same purpose. And so if we're going to engage employees in a remote workforce, and we're going to engage employees in a decentralized culture, then purpose and mission and meaningful work that we all collectively are working toward is the one thing that I believe is going to be the key to doing that moving forward from 2020 on.
For that great answer. So we're going to take a couple more questions. Lior, you'd like to ask a question?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Ryan. First of all, thanks for doing this. Yeah, and just want to say, I like when when you speak about the soccer team. I'm very into sports, and I always drawing this parallel. I think that sports are such a great metaphor of life, right? I mean, and I just happen to coach my son's soccer team. They are 9 years old. And I also happen to run my business, and I'm always drawing these parallels, and in the same way that you want the team to look like you, right? And you want your company, you want to look like you. But I'm just thinking, we are here and we are all high achievers or want to be high achievers. We want to get better. We want to improve every day. Yeah. But not necessarily everybody is like this, right?
Yeah.
So I just wondering, it takes time in order to that your team understand your culture and then do things like that. So as business owners, we are always thinking about our business, and this is in the back of our mind every time.
Yeah.
But as you said earlier, there will always be some people that are there for the paycheck, or maybe a little more than the paycheck. So I'm just wondering, how can you implement this culture when you have people that not necessarily, are there embrace 110% your culture?
Yeah. After a year of doing the culture of good work with the big good, our good, my good, we learned several things. We did a survey, and 93% of employees stated that the culture of good and doing good, big good, our good, my good, gave them a sense of fulfillment in their everyday work. This is before I knew anything about engagement, fulfillment, or any of those things. 93%. And when we first started, it was met with a little bit of skepticism. Simply because companies tend to like to embrace new ideas and find new ways and solutions of doing things, creating culture, engagement, all of those things. And there were others that, as you stated, they were there for the paycheck. What we learned early on is that pyramid idea, big good, our good, my good, really, it really mattered that it went in sequential order that way. And so we started with the top of the pyramid because we made the mistake of thinking, let's just give all the employees autonomy to choose what they were passionate about, and we'll just give them PTO time and volunteer hours, and they'll go out and do good. And there was very limited numbers of employees that actively got involved in that. The moment we implemented Big Good First, where it was company-wide mission, purpose, the moment we did that, it was like light bulbs of passion went on. It was like sparks happened. The good that we were doing with backpacks there was an emotional connection, and it made sense because these were local communities where these stores were located all across the states. And there were only like 2 or 3 employees in each one of those locations. And so it required them to get involved in their local community, reach out to nonprofit charitable organizations, reach out to first responders to come and participate. And that grew year over year. But that first year was really just building. But when we embarked on the Big Good, where everyone was collectively doing that good together, the camaraderie that came from that, the peer pressure that was like, there were a few people. I remember one gentleman that was like, when we did a nursing home event, he was like, I am not going into a nursing home. I'm fine with the elderly. I don't want to do that work. I don't feel comfortable in that. And quite frankly, his coworker said, our whole team is going, which means you're going. We're not giving you a choice, right? And so he went, and this particular employee, by the end of that hour, had adopted a grandpa while he was in there, sat down with this gentleman who had fought in one of the wars, and was the one employee that went back week after week after that event to spend time with his new grandpa. And so I think, culture in an organization typically takes fully about 36 months to fully change. Organizational change just takes a while. And we like the quick methodologies. Now, culture of good took about 12 months before it really started to make sense to the company-wide collective. All across the board, it took about 12 months, but we had to, as an organization, not only say we were going to do the big good, our good, my good, but we were going to set the dates and really get strategic about it, and execute on that and commit to it and make those promises. And so when the employees saw that this wasn't a flavor of the month, this wasn't just something that the CEO or the boss got up and said, we should do good and we should care, but they were implementing a strategy and they were committed to it and they were purposeful about it. About 12 months of doing that work, and we had well over 90% of employees that were bought in. You're always going to have the outliers that are going to say, you know what, it's not for me. You know what, that's okay. You just want to make sure the outliers aren't the ones that are purposeful and care. So you'll never have 100% of employees that are fully bought in. But it's rare within the company that we started this in to ever run across an employee that says, you know what, I really don't care about the culture of good, because it started impacting who we were hiring, some people said this culture is not for me, and better employees came in that had more of a heart, and we're still driving the business to success. So this isn't just about getting a bunch of Mother Teresas in a room that have a bleeding heart and want to just go out and do this good. It's about finding the best people in the world. As a matter of fact, I would say we don't find the best employees find us. And they find us as they connect to our culture. And in doing the work of big good, our good, my good, in that sequential order is what made the difference. That strategy worked.
Amazing.
I hope that helps. Yeah.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Leo. That was a great question. We're going to take two more questions. John Brewer.
Yeah, thank you. Well, good morning, Ryan.
I see a familiar face on the screen.
How you doing, bro? Good?
Doing wonderful.
I've known Ryan for a number of years. I used to organize conferences here in Canada, and he spoke at a couple. And I will say, impressive though he is online, if you get the chance when all this is over to experience him in person, I urge you all to take that. I have a question for you. I'll
send you that $20, John. Thank you for
everything. All donations gratefully received. I do have a question for you, and I hope it's not putting you a little bit on the spot. So I apologise if it is, but we're all very moved by the description of your own life and this idea of a single experience around which, which changes you, which informs how you lead. And I don't think it's too much. Well, perhaps it is a bit of a stretch. I don't know. It's a bit of a stretch to say that as a society, we're going through one of those right now.
Yeah. And
we're going through two of them.
Yes.
And specifically, the one I want to just ask you about is the tragic killing of George Floyd.
Thank you.
And the subsequent sort of focus on the issue of racialized groups within our society, Black Lives Matter, etc. I know this is something that you've thought about and written about around privilege and the like. But as organizations look to things to sort of express their purpose and get engaged in their communities and their world, has this Black Lives Matter moment, for want of a better description, has that changed how you think about this? And how would you suggest organizations incorporate that because there's a lot of organizations running around saying, we want to do something for people of color, racialized people. What's your take? Is that a fair question?
Yeah, it's a very fair question. And it has been transformative for me and my family. My wife and both my daughters are Black, as you know, and there were a lot of late nights and holding each other and tears and a lot of fear. There's fears within my family that those that are white or white passing may not have. The thing that the steps toward that work, I think is what we need to start with in terms of this conversation. And for me, I'll just share my own personal journey. For me, it started with not just saying, you know what, I'm against racism, or as a company, I'm not racist, or I care about this. It was about actually doing the work of anti-racism. It was starting with my own personal biases, my own personal prejudice, my own personal racism in my life. And I know we throw terms around and we don't like that, and we like to push that off on other people and say, well, we know that they're racist, we know that they're prejudiced, we know that they have bias, but it's in me. And I had to as a leader, I think that's what leaders do. I think leaders take the step and say, you know what, how does this work start in me before it moves into my work and my business? And so I'll just share a real practical advice on how to begin the work of anti-racism, because I think we need to get very practical about it. All of us are moved to do something, so where do we start? I'll start by just addressing those that are white or white passing on this call. Thank you, John, by the way, for asking that. I would encourage you to order Layla F. Saad's book. It's called Me and White Supremacy. Me and White Supremacy. Again, we throw terms around. So if that title, whatever that is for you, that book is 28 days of working on yourself if you're white or white passing. All right. And that work is 28 days of identifying your own prejudice, bias, and racism in your own life. And I believe that work of anti-racism starts with us as individuals, and starts with leaders that are willing to step forward and take that step. Because once we do that work individually, then we're able to see how prejudice, bias, and racism has infiltrated into our workplaces. And it has. Systematically, it's the underbelly of a lot of our experiences in the workplace in the world. It's how the world works in many ways. And so dismantling that in ourselves first, and then being able to see that through a clear lens of our own vision, being able to see that in our business, of knowing how to do anti-racism work, which goes beyond diversity, goes beyond inclusion, and quite frankly goes beyond just creating a culture of belonging. And so I'm speaking to those that are white or white passing in terms of that book. For my wife and my girls, I'm doing everything that I can to ensure that they're given space to rest and to heal, but also knowing that I, as a leader, am first required to do that work on myself, and then secondly, to listen. Leadership is about listening. And when we listen well, we can lead well. So this isn't a time for leaders just to step up and say, we're going to do this work. But it's really a chance to take a step back and say, what do I need to do in myself to dismantle it? Looking through that lens, then how can I dismantle it in my company, in my business? And it's more than just diversity numbers. It's more than just inclusion numbers or creating a sense of belonging. It really is the work of anti-racism. And that's work that's going to take the rest of our lives. And so those leaders that are committed to this because it's trendy or a fad, I would encourage you to take a step back and start to do anti-racism work in yourself, and then press forward into how are we going to do this within our business as well. That can certainly be something that, as we're passionate and compassionate about, we don't need compassion or empathy as much as we need action. And so action is what it's going to take. And so really taking steps, getting that book, Me and White Supremacy, going through the 28 days. I would encourage everyone to do that. And then it can become work groups, and then it can start to have an impact on the businesses that we lead as well. But it has to start by some vulnerability and saying it's not work for other people to do, it starts with me. And that's what I believe that leadership is really about. And so, for those of you that aren't white or white passing, not having the sense that you have to be the one person that answers all the questions or leads the diversity efforts in your company. I think it really comes down to each one of us that are leaders, regardless of, what color our skin is, that we do the work in ourselves and then we bring that into our business as well. But thank you for bringing that up. And it certainly needs to be something that that we do just simply because we have a heart, And
I was thinking particularly, as organizations look for outside causes to support and get their people involved in, this is something that you have to sort of account for. So thank you, Ryan. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, John. I appreciate you.
That was a great question, John. And thank you so much for sharing your approach and tackling anti-racism. And thank you. We're going to take one last question and then we're going to let you go. Thank you so much for staying this long with us. We're going to try squeeze as much as we can from you. So a last question is from Emily. When getting started with your purposeful initiative, do you recommend having a part-time job or even a full-time job, basically a source of stable revenue to be able to live and sustain yourself and your family while growing your initiative until you can live off of it?
Yeah, so when I started Culture of Good, I had one foot in nonprofit and one foot in for-profit for about a year and a half. So I was bivocational. When I launched Culture of Good and did that work for a year and a half, I was a part-time employee for that company. I wasn't on the executive team. I just worked with the executive team and got their leadership buy-in and started growing it that way. But certainly my intention with this kind of work is not for people to quit their job and start a nonprofit. That was all hypothetical. What I'm looking to do is how do you take the work that you're already doing and how do you craft your passion into that, right? How do you bring what you want to do in the world that can make it better? And how do you bring that into your everyday work? And we can give our employees the permission to do that. But as far as us as individuals embarking on this work, if we work for a company, we shouldn't have to go work for a charity to be charitable. And so we become the spark. Even if our entire company is not going to embark on big good right away, we work with our peers, maybe within our department. We inspire them to go out on a Saturday and do good. We inspire them to create a culture internally where we come and we care for one another. We care for the customer. We're doing this work together. And that continues to grow over time, because what you'll find is that purpose and good is very, for lack of a better term, I hate to say it right now during COVID, but it's very contagious in that sense. Good grows. It just grows. As you do good within your department, it continues to increase and have a greater impact. And so you always want to start small, embracing the opportunities to learn along the way, what works, what doesn't work. But I would certainly keep whatever job that you have, because the last thing I'd want you to do is 2 years from now call me up and say, I tried this Culture Good thing, and now I need some Culture Good because I still don't have a job, right? So keep your job part-time, but embark on doing this. And individuals can go and if you don't have full-time employment, you're not working for someone else, you're a consultant, you can bring this as part of your consultancy to other organizations and businesses and help them implement a culture of good in their company as well. So there's several different facets to what we do and what we offer. But I would certainly, as an individual, what I did is I kept I kept my job until I could really transition to full time? It's a great question, by the way. Thank you for asking me.
Thank you so much for
And
that.
I'm here for as long as you want me. So, and Valerie, thank you so much for, first of all, being the one to reach out to me.
Oh, it's a
So
pleasure.
if you loved it today, it was her fault. And if you didn't like it today, it was her fault. No, I'm kidding. It was mine. But thank you, Valerie, for reaching out. And this has been such an honor. You know, if anyone wants to get in touch with me, they can reach out on cultureofgood.com.
Thank you so much, Ryan. No, we are absolutely grateful that you were able to give us your time today. I'd also like to just quickly mention that thank you, Rosalia, for putting the link to the book, Me and My White Supremacy. If any of you would like to purchase it, the link is in the chat. Wow, I hope you all feel inspired to do some good. Thank you, Ryan, for the gems that you've given us today, the inspiration. Thank you for your vulnerability, for sharing your family with us and sharing your story. Welcome to Power Skills, ladies and gentlemen. We hope you'll join us for the rest of the programming. 12 o'clock, we have Madeline Stammen, who will talk to us about resilience. If you still haven't registered for the other events throughout the week, please feel free to visit our website. If someone on the team could kindly share the link. Ryan, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Love you guys. Keep loving yourself. Take care of yourself. Stay safe, stay healthy, and do the work. It's worth it.
We will. Thanks to you, we definitely will now.
Thank you.
Very inspiring. Thank you.
Go ahead. Exit out.
Great. So we're stopping recording. Okay. So we're not recorded anymore. People are going down fast. Amazing.
I realized I was clapping with my camera off, but good job, everybody. And for those of you still in this, in the room with us, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great
Exactly.
work,
You
Valerie.
were fantastic, Valerie.
All right. I
Okay.
will see you in the next room.
Yes, this is true. Oh yeah, so it's going to start shortly.
Yeah.
Let's stop the live on Facebook. How do we?
I have